Our response must be to build a strong economy and a more secure Canada. President Trump claims that Canada...
Can you believe what just happened? Even the United States is caught off guard. Canada and Mexico have just taken surprising economic steps that challenge America's long-standing power in global trade. Their new measures are shaking up established trade routes and altering how goods move around the world. In this video, we will reveal fresh insights into these movements and explain how they could change shipping and trade forever. Canada's strategic tariff shift. Canada's new tariff measures on U.S. imports have taken the world by surprise. In recent months, Canada has imposed targeted tariffs on a range of American goods. These measures focus on products tied to key political districts in the United States. The intent is clear: to force a shift in trade and reduce U.S. influence in the Canadian market. Canadian authorities have planned these tariffs carefully. They have not been applied randomly. Instead, they target specific sectors that play a large role in U.S. trade. For instance, higher tariffs have been placed on agricultural products and manufactured items that are central to certain U.S. regions. Canadian officials believe these sectors are most sensitive to changes in trade policy. The economic rationale behind these measures is straightforward. When tariffs raise the cost of U.S. goods, it makes them less competitive in Canada. This price increase encourages buyers to look for alternative sources. In simple terms, it is like delivering a precise economic punch that weakens the position of U.S. exports. As prices rise, American products become less attractive to Canadian consumers and businesses. The hope is that this will lead to a realignment in trade relationships. Canadian policymakers say that these tariffs will not only protect local industries, but also prompt the U.S. to reconsider its trade practices. They argue that a fair trade system benefits both sides in the long run. By targeting goods linked to influential U.S. regions, Canada sends a message that economic policies must be balanced. The tariffs are intended to force American companies to adjust their prices and strategies, creating a level playing field for trade. Some experts note that these measures are a calculated move by Canada to regain control over its market. They compare the strategy to a well-timed strike in a high-stakes game. With these tariffs in place, Canada aims to reduce its dependence on U.S. imports and diversify its trade ties with other countries. This change could help Canadian businesses find new partners and open up fresh markets. Critics in the U.S. have reacted strongly to the news. They argue that such targeted tariffs might spark retaliatory measures. However, Canadian officials maintain that the tariffs are designed to promote fairer trade practices, not to start a trade war. They point to the long history of U.S. dominance in the region and argue that a new approach is needed to shift the balance of power. This strategy marks a significant shift in North American trade policy. Canada's approach is not about a full-scale confrontation. It is about recalibrating the rules of engagement in global commerce. By raising costs on specific U.S. goods, Canada hopes to force American businesses to rethink their pricing, supply chains, and market strategies. The move is seen as a way to protect Canadian economic interests while encouraging a more diverse trading system. Canada's targeted tariffs send a strong economic message. Now we turn to Mexico's offensive economic moves that aim to build new trade routes and secure fresh deals with global partners. Could these actions shift power in the region? Let's see what Mexico is doing next. Mexico's offensive economic moves. Mexico is taking strong steps to change its economic future. The country is building new trade routes that connect its coastlines with markets around the world. This project is part of a broader plan to shift away from heavy reliance on U.S. trade. Mexican leaders are signing new deals with partners in the European Union, China, and South America. These agreements aim to secure stable markets and improve long-term trade conditions. By locking in these deals, Mexico hopes to create a more balanced trade network that benefits its economy. The government has been active in negotiating trade contracts with European countries. Officials have confirmed discussions with key EU leaders to boost mutual trade and improve cooperation on resource management. At the same time, Mexican authorities have reached out to Chinese businesses. These talks focus on joint investments and long-term supply agreements that will help both sides. Trade with South American nations has also increased, with new deals aiming to lower tariffs and encourage joint projects. Such partnerships are meant to reduce Mexico's dependency on the United States and open new markets for its products. Investments in domestic manufacturing and infrastructure are a central part of Mexico's strategy. The country is pouring funds into upgrading old facilities and building new ones. Modern ports are under construction to handle increased cargo volume. New rail lines and highways are being developed to connect these ports with inland regions. This comprehensive plan is designed to support faster, more efficient movement of goods. Improved infrastructure will lower transportation costs and shorten delivery times. Experts expect the project to create up to 500,000 jobs and attract significant foreign investment. The project's price tag is $5 billion, a number that has captured global attention. Mexico's offensive moves are part of a larger effort to build an independent economic base. The country is working to reduce its reliance on U.S. imports and strengthen its industries. New trade agreements with partners in the EU, China, and South America support this shift. Mexican leaders say that diversifying trade routes will boost local growth and protect domestic producers. This strategy may encourage more investment in local manufacturing. As supply chains adjust, companies could find new, cost-effective ways to move goods. Overall, these measures are expected to boost economic growth and reposition Mexico as a key player in global trade. With Mexico forging new trade routes and locking in international deals, the stage is set for significant market disruptions. Next, let's see how these moves affect the U.S. economy and supply chains. How deep will these shocks hit American households? Impact on the U.S. economy and supply chains. Recent moves by Canada and Mexico are affecting the U.S. economy and its supply chains in many ways. American businesses that depend on imports are now facing rising costs. When tariffs go up, the price of goods also increases. Consumers may see higher prices on everyday items such as groceries and fuel. This change puts pressure on families who already face tight budgets. Some industries are already reporting disruptions. For example, retailers have noted delays in shipments from Canada and Mexico. As trade routes shift away from the U.S., many companies are forced to find new suppliers. This change in sourcing can lead to longer delivery times. Manufacturers that once relied on a steady flow of imported goods now face uncertainties. In turn, these delays and higher costs ripple through the economy. Reports indicate that certain key materials, such as electronics components and raw materials for automotive parts, are becoming more expensive. One industry expert noted that increased tariffs on goods like agricultural products and machinery are causing noticeable price hikes. In addition, fuel costs have risen due to changes in energy supply routes. For example, oil prices have shown a slight upward trend as shipping companies adjust their routes to avoid new trade barriers. Supply chains that have long depended on smooth trade with Canada and Mexico are now experiencing a shakeup. Some businesses report that their supply routes have been diverted to other countries, which often have higher shipping costs. The result is a disruption that affects not only the cost, but also the availability of goods. Small businesses, in particular, find these changes challenging because they have less bargaining power when it comes to securing alternative sources. Large companies are working to adapt by renegotiating contracts and seeking new partners in regions with more stable trade conditions. Many firms are also exploring options to move part of their production closer to home. This shift in strategy, however, comes with its own set of challenges. Changing long-established supply chains takes time and requires significant investments. Some economists warn that if these disruptions continue, it could lead to a slowdown in economic growth. In addition to these supply chain issues, the overall trade environment in the U.S. is now less predictable. With new tariffs and altered trade routes, uncertainty looms over future contracts. Investors have noticed fluctuations in the stock prices of companies that rely heavily on imports. The combined effect of these changes can impact the broader U.S. economy. Every day, families might feel the pinch as prices for common items such as milk, bread, and fuel rise. This economic shock could have long-term effects on consumer spending and overall economic stability. As businesses adjust to these new conditions, policymakers are under pressure to find solutions. They face the difficult task of balancing domestic needs with the shifting global trade landscape. U.S. supply chains face rising costs and delays as trade shifts. Now, global leaders and policymakers are reacting to these moves. What new alliances might form, and how could power balances change? Global reactions and shifting alliances. Global reactions to Canada and Mexico's moves have been swift and varied. Leaders around the world are taking notice. In Washington, officials expressed surprise at the rapid change in trade policy. A senior U.S. trade advisor said these measures could force a rethinking of old alliances. European leaders have also responded. For instance, Germany's top officials noted that shifting trade routes might open new economic opportunities. French President Emmanuel Macron has stated that Europe must now consider strengthening ties with Latin America. Major outlets like Reuters and Bloomberg report that these moves are altering international trade dynamics. Some U.S. officials are worried that the new tariffs and trade deals may weaken American influence. A well-known U.S. senator mentioned that these unexpected policy changes might lead to a reordering of long-established supply chains. This shift could reduce America's control over key markets. Meanwhile, European policymakers view the actions as both corrective and transformative. They see a chance to secure their interests and lessen dependence on U.S. imports. In Latin America, countries such as Brazil, Chile, and Colombia are paying close attention. Trade ministers from these nations have indicated plans to forge closer partnerships with Mexico and Canada. They hope to create a regional trade network that ensures more stable and favorable routes. This realignment may also boost local industries and open new investment channels. Recent figures suggest that negotiations between Latin American countries and European partners have increased by around 5% over the last year, a sign of growing interest in diversifying trade away from traditional U.S.-led systems. In Asia, major economies are reassessing their supply routes as well. Countries like China and India are reviewing their existing trade deals to adapt to the shifting landscape. Some experts warn that these new moves could lead to a broader reordering of global power balances. The possibility of a new trade bloc emerging in Latin America has stirred discussions at international forums in Brussels and Washington. Officials from both sides agree that a shift in alliances could have long-term economic and political implications. U.S. policymakers, including figures like Vice President Kamala Harris and Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo, are now re-examining strategies to counter the changing trade environment. Their concern is that a sustained move away from U.S.-led trade networks could leave America at a disadvantage. Industry experts note that the market may soon witness a realignment that could reduce U.S. influence in global commerce. This shift might lead to higher costs for American businesses and force a revision of long-term trade policies. Global reactions and changing alliances hint at a reordering of international trade. With shifts in power and new partnerships forming, our next focus is on future scenarios and policy implications that could reshape the shipping game. Could these trends change the rules? Future scenarios and policy implications. Recent studies offer fresh insights into the long-term effects of these economic moves. Analysts from Reuters, Bloomberg, and other leading sources have noted that Canada and Mexico's strategies could lead to a major shift in global trade patterns. Reports indicate that digital tools and new data systems are already changing the way resource extraction and management are handled. These improvements may lower costs and improve efficiency in ways that could influence global shipping. One potential scenario is that if Canada and Mexico continue with their economic measures, traditional trade routes may be redrawn. Shipping companies might shift more cargo from the Panama Canal to the new corridor routes. This could lead to a significant realignment of global supply chains. As trade flows change, some experts expect that regions previously dependent on old routes could gain increased importance. For example, if the new routes prove faster and cheaper, they may attract billions in investments and create hundreds of thousands of jobs in the logistics and transportation sectors. Another future scenario involves innovations in resource management. The EU and other allies are already exploring new methods to reduce reliance on traditional sources. Some proposals include using renewable energy systems to power extraction and refining processes. These new practices could reduce environmental impact and make supply chains more resilient. Industry leaders are discussing ways to use automation and digital monitoring to streamline operations. These changes may help countries adjust to a shifting global market more quickly and with less risk. Policy trends also play a vital role. Governments in Europe, Asia, and North America are considering new regulations that could support local industries. These policies may focus on reducing dependence on unstable trade routes and encouraging investments in new infrastructure. For example, some European nations are talking about measures to support domestic manufacturing and resource recycling. Such policies could lead to a more balanced and self-reliant trade system. With governments on both sides of the Atlantic looking at these options, future trade agreements might reflect a new global order. Economic factors such as rising production costs and shifting demand patterns are likely to reshape the market. Companies will need to adjust their strategies as supply chains evolve. The use of advanced digital tools will help firms predict market trends and respond faster to changes. As these tools become more common, they will make global trade more agile and efficient. This improved adaptability may allow businesses to secure better deals and lower overall costs. Technology and policy trends are converging to create a new trade environment. With innovations in automation and digital monitoring, companies can optimize routes and reduce delays. At the same time, revised trade policies will help countries reduce reliance on old systems. The result could be a more stable and predictable global market that benefits all players. New trends and policy shifts are setting the stage for long-term changes in global trade. Now we gather additional perspectives and examine regional impacts. How will local economies and global alliances be reshaped? Additional perspectives and regional impact. Neighboring countries are now sharing their views on these trade shifts. In Canada, local business leaders and regional analysts note that the new tariff policies are already affecting domestic industries. Some report that Canadian manufacturers are seeing increased costs on imported raw materials, which in turn may encourage more local production. Regional experts predict that such changes will boost Canadian investments in new technology and infrastructure. These moves help Canadian companies secure a stronger market presence and reduce long-term reliance on U.S. trade. In Mexico, economic officials are taking proactive steps to strengthen local supply chains. Mexican authorities have promoted domestic manufacturing by offering incentives and lowering trade barriers. Local industries have started to expand, while regional analysts expect a rise in employment opportunities. New ports, rail lines, and highways are part of a broader effort to build a self-sufficient trade network. Mexican experts say these investments could attract billions in international capital and transform local economies that have long been underdeveloped. Other trade partners are also weighing in on the situation. Several European countries, including Germany and France, have shown interest in forging closer ties with Mexico. Trade ministers from these nations point to the new corridor and revised trade deals as an opportunity to diversify supply sources. In Asia, major economies such as China and India are watching closely, and discussions have begun on forming new agreements that bypass traditional U.S.-led routes. These emerging partnerships signal a shift toward a more balanced global trade system. Regional perspectives vary, but common themes appear. Analysts across Latin America stress the importance of economic independence. They argue that measures taken by Canada and Mexico are not merely reactive, but form part of a larger strategy to reshape trade relations. Some experts predict that these actions may set a precedent for other nations facing similar challenges. For example, countries in Africa and Southeast Asia are already exploring ways to secure their resource bases and reduce external dependency. Industry experts have also noted that technology will play a key role in this new trade landscape. Advances in digital monitoring, automation, and data analysis are helping businesses optimize their supply chains. Companies are now better equipped to adjust to changes in demand and logistics. This technological shift, combined with updated trade policies, could result in lower costs and increased efficiency across borders. Comments from key figures further highlight the impact. A Canadian trade commissioner mentioned that the new measures are a wake-up call for the traditional trade routes. Similarly, a Mexican economic advisor stated that the changes would force a realignment of global markets. Such remarks are common among regional leaders, who see these moves as a step toward a more diversified and resilient economic future. We explored how Canada and Mexico are reshaping global trade and alliances, challenging the U.S. What are your thoughts? Please comment below, like, and subscribe for more valuable insights today.